Welcome to the Science of Fiction HFY Galaxy Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from HFY Galaxy Tales, where humanity always finds a way. The crash and the creature. The sky burned red as the escape pod broke through the clouds. It twisted in the air, sparks flying, metal groaning under pressure. Inside, a small alien girl held her breath, eyes wide, body shaking with fear. She had never flown alone before, and she had never crashed before either. The pod slammed into the rocky valley below, bouncing twice before sliding into a field of black grass. Smoke hissed from broken wires, the hatch creaked open, and silence followed. Leary crawled out, her arms cut and legs trembling. She looked around with wide glowing violet eyes, her skin pale with dust, her thin robe was torn, her long silver hair messy and full of ash. She was alone, scared, and injured. She tried to walk, but pain shot through her ankle. Still, she limped into the nearby rocks, needing to hide, needing to get away. Her people had told her stories about this world, about the monsters that lived here, especially humans. They said humans were tall, loud, violent, and heartless. She believed those stories, and right now, she prayed none would find her. But the sound of boots crunching on stone made her freeze. She looked up from her hiding spot and saw him, a tall figure in gray armor. Walking slowly through the smoke, he had a large weapon slung over his back, a helmet clipped to his belt, and a face full of scars and stubble. His eyes were calm but sharp, scanning the wreckage. He moved like a hunter, quiet and alert. Leary gasped and backed deeper into the shadows. Her breath stuck in her throat. She grabbed a broken stick and held it in front of her like a weapon. She didn't know if he saw her, but she didn't want to find out. The human stopped walking. He looked directly at the rocks where she hid. Then, slowly, he raised his hands to show they were empty. "I saw your pod go down," he said calmly. "I'm not here to hurt you." His voice was deep but soft. Not angry, not loud. Leary didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared, heart pounding in her chest. The human took one slow step forward and placed a bottle of water on the ground. Then he stepped back again and sat down near a rock. He didn't chase her, didn't yell, didn't draw his weapon. Leary looked at the bottle, her throat dry, her lips cracked. Still, she waited until the sun dropped lower and the air turned cold. Only then did she crawl out slowly, eyes on him the whole time. She snatched the bottle and ran behind another rock, drinking fast and messy. The human just watched her from a distance, not smiling, not frowning. "My name's Cole," he said, quietly. "You don't have to talk. Just stay close. This place gets dangerous at night." Leary didn't reply, but she didn't run either. As darkness spread, cold wind swept across the rocks. Cole built a small fire, using stones and sticks from nearby. He placed a blanket near it and laid his gear beside him. He didn't move toward her, didn't try to touch her. Leary stayed close to the edge of the camp, sitting with her knees pulled to her chest. She watched him with wide, tired eyes. She didn't sleep, just kept watching him all night, afraid to blink too long. Cole noticed, but he didn't say anything. He laid back against a rock, eyes closed, breathing steady. He looked peaceful, not like a monster at all. But Leary still didn't trust him. She had seen humans on screens before, in warning messages, but never this close, never so real. When morning came, the sky turned soft purple, and birds with silver wings flew overhead. Cole stood up and stretched, then looked at her. "Still here?" he asked softly. "Good." He handed her a small food bar and motioned for her to eat. She took it carefully, biting slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. He looked at her ankle and pointed. "Your legs hurt," he said. "Let me see." She hissed and shook her head. He nodded and backed off again. "Okay, no touching. I get it," he said with a light smile. "You're strong, I can see that." Leary tilted her head, confused. No one had ever called her strong before, not even her own people. The day passed slowly, and they didn't speak much. Cole checked his gear, cleaned his rifle, and marked the map on his wristpad. Leary just watched, slowly letting her guard down. That night, the fire burned again, and the stars shone bright above. Leary sat a little closer this time, not touching him, but not so far either. She wrapped the blanket around herself and watched him sleep. Her heart was still scared, but a small voice inside whispered something strange. He didn't feel like danger anymore. He felt like something else, maybe safety, maybe peace, but she didn't know yet. She just knew she didn't want to be alone anymore. The silence between them. The morning wind blew softly through the rocks. The sky was clear, and the red sun peeked over the hills. Cole stood near the edge of a cliff, looking at his wristpad. Still no signal. No rescue. Just silence. Behind him, Leary sat with her legs crossed, watching him with careful eyes. She hadn't run, and she hadn't spoken, but she hadn't tried to hurt him either. To Cole, that was already progress. He looked over his shoulder and gave a small nod. Still quiet. Huh, he said. That's all right. I'll do the talking. He tossed a piece of fruit toward her, a soft-skinned thing he picked from a tree nearby. Leary caught it, sniffed it, then bit into it slowly. Her eyes didn't leave his face, still full of caution. They packed up the fire and began walking. Again, Leary limped slightly, her ankles still sore. Cole didn't try to help her. Not yet. He knew she had to want it, not be forced. As they moved through the rocky trail, strange bird calls echoed in the air. The ground was uneven, sharp in some places. Suddenly, Leary stopped, her ears twitched. She turned sharply and let out a small warning sound. Cole raised his weapon and scanned the trees. From behind the stones, a low growl came, deep and rough. A wild beast leaped out, a four-legged predator with black fur and glowing red eyes. It lunged straight for Leary, fast and angry. She froze, panic taking over, but Cole moved before she could scream. He stepped in front of her, firing his rifle twice. The shots hit the creature in the chest, sending it crashing into the rocks. Leary fell back, breathing hard, her heart racing. Cole didn't speak, just reached out his hand slowly. She stared at it for a long moment, then reached out with her small fingers and grabbed it. He pulled her to her feet, and she didn't let go right away. She was shaking, but her eyes had changed. There was still fear, but also something else. Trust. They sat by a tree after the fight, both catching their breath. Cole looked at her gently and said, "You okay?" Leary hesitated, then nodded once. After a long pause, she opened her mouth and said softly, "Why did you help?" Her voice was quiet, cracked from fear and dryness. Cole looked at her and shrugged. "No one should die alone," he said. "Not if I can stop it." Leary looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling. No one had ever said that to her before, not even from her own kind. As they walked again, the silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was soft, comfortable, like a quiet song only they could hear. That night, they stopped near a small cave, hidden and dry. Cole made another fire, and Leary helped gather wood this time. She didn't sit far anymore. She sat next to him, shoulder close. Though not touching, he showed her how to make warm broth using powder from his kit. She watched his hands carefully, mimicking each motion. When he offered her the first bowl, she didn't hesitate. She took it, whispered thank you, and drank slowly. As the fire crackled, they shared simple things. She told him her name again, Leary, this time with pride. He smiled and said her name back, careful with the sound. Cole talked about Earth, about rain and coffee and busy cities. Leary didn't know these things, but she listened with wonder. She told him about her sky songs, her people's way of dancing under starlight. He closed his eyes and imagined it, smiling softly. The night grew colder, and Leary started to shiver. Cole placed a blanket on the ground and laid down, arms behind his head. She stared at him for a long time, unsure, then crawled over slowly. She laid beside him, not touching, but close. Minutes passed, then she leaned her head against his chest, gently. His body was warm, steady, safe. Cole didn't move, didn't speak. He just let her rest there. And in that stillness, something shifted. Leary no longer saw him as a monster, not a soldier, not a hunter, but something much harder to find, a protector. Her eyes closed slowly, and for the first time in days, she slept peacefully, her breath steady, her fear quiet, and Cole, though wide awake, smiled under the stars. He had come to this planet alone, ready for war, but now, beside him slept a fragile alien girl who had once feared him. Now she trusted him enough to sleep on his chest, and somehow, that meant more than any mission ever could. The signal and the storm. The next morning, the sky was cloudy and gray. Winds moved faster through the trees, and the air smelled of rain and dust. Cole stood at the top of a hill, holding his wristpad high above his head. A soft beep echoed from the device's signal, faint but real. Leary climbed up behind him, her feet light and careful. She tilted her head as the sound repeated. Cole looked at her with hope in his eyes. "Rescue signal," he said. "A ship might be nearby." Leary didn't speak, but her eyes lit up. She looked to the sky and back to him, nodding slowly. They had walked so far together, through broken trails, strange animals, and sleepless nights, and now, There was finally a way home. They started moving toward the source of the signal, but dark clouds rolled across the sky, and thunder rumbled in the distance. The wind grew louder, carrying the scent of danger. Cole stopped, looking around. Storm's coming fast, he said. We need shelter. Before he could say more, Leary grabbed his hand and pointed to the west. There, she whispered, caved, hidden. He nodded. And they ran together, moving fast across uneven ground. The first raindrops hit just as they reached the entrance of a large cave. The wind howled behind them, and lightning lit up the sky. Inside, it was dry and quiet, the stone walls blocking the storm's roar. Cole placed his gear down and checked the wrist pad again. Signal still there, still pulsing, waiting for someone to answer. Leary sat near the cave wall, wrapping her arms around her knees. She looked at him, eyes full of thoughts she couldn't say out loud. After a moment, she spoke. You go, when ship comes. Cole looked at her and sat down beside her. Yeah, he said quietly, but only if you come with me. Leary shook her head slowly. My people, ... They do not accept humans. She whispered, they will fear you. Cole smiled gently. They feared me too, he said, even back on Earth. I never belonged anywhere. She looked at him, surprised. You, she said softly, strong, brave. He shook his head. I was just another soldier, he replied. But you trusted me when you had every reason not to. That takes real strength. Thunder cracked loud outside, making the cave shake slightly. Leary leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. I was afraid, she admitted, but not now. He turned his head slightly, resting it against hers. You're not alone anymore, he whispered. Not while I'm here. They stayed like that, for a while, the fire crackling between them. The storm outside raged, but inside the cave, everything was warm and calm. The next morning, the storm had passed, birds flew overhead, and light shone through the trees again. Cole's wrist pad beeped loudly, louder than before. The ship was close. They climbed another ridge and saw a small rescue craft descending, slowly, its lights flashing, its engines humming through the valley. Leary stepped back, fear returning to her eyes. Cole turned to her and knelt down. You don't have to be scared, he said gently. I'll tell them you're with me. She hesitated, then took a deep breath and nodded. As the ship landed, 2 crew members stepped out in clean suits, weapons lowered but ready. Cole raised his hands. Friendly, he called out. 1 human, 1 alien, both survivors. They paused, looked at Leary, then back at Cole. One of them asked, is she dangerous? Cole looked down at Leary, then back at the man. No, he said proudly. She's my friend. The crew lowered their weapons, motioning them forward. Cole stepped into the ship, and Leary followed, still quiet but calm. Inside, it was warm, clean, full of lights and soft voices. A bed was prepared for them, and warm food was offered. Leary sat beside Cole, close enough that their shoulders touched. She looked around nervously, but when Cole placed his hand gently over hers, she relaxed. Later that night, as the ship moved toward the stars, Cole laid back on the soft bed. Leary climbed up beside him, curling up gently, her head resting on his chest. His arm wrapped around her as she breathed slowly, eyes closing in peace. She didn't shake anymore, didn't flinch. She slept deeply, safely, because the one she had feared at first had become her protector, her shield, her warmth. And Cole, who had once felt like a weapon with no purpose, now held something precious in his arms, a bond deeper than words, stronger than fear. Not every war is fought with guns. Some are fought with patience, with kindness, with trust. And in that silent moment in the stars, both alien and human finally belonged, not because they looked alike, but because they chose each other.